passwords and cracking passwords, and even more password communication and conversation. All that and more, this time on ThreatWire.
Hello and welcome to ThreatWire. My name is Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And this is the show where we summarize all the things that are threatening the internet, your privacy, security. Security in particular, we're talking about this week, passwords.
Passwords?
Passwords.
What about passwords?
Well, we are on we're on vacation now. However, we did have some opportunity to talk to Jeremi Gosney, who is an excellent password cracker. And this is the kind of stuff that we get into on our sister show, Hack 5, a lot. But I figured this would be a good opportunity to introduce some of those things as far as what you can do as a consumer when it comes to passwords. There's a lot of mythology that goes around there about, like, you know, oh, well, 8-digit password would take a hacker 12 years to crack, and none of that's true.
So should my passwords be 8 digits? Because they're like 3.
No. Is it G-O-D? Or is it S-E-X?
G-O-D.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So with all that, I figured we would just go ahead and talk to Jeremi Gosney about passwords, his awesome password cracking cluster that he debuted at the Password Swell conference in Norway, which is able to take down a
cluster.
Yeah, it's able to take down a Windows password in 5.5 hours. Any standard 8-character Windows password like that. Yeah.
Well, luckily I have numbers in mine, so I'm good.
In short, make them really long. Let's talk to Jeremi Gosney. We'll see you on the other side. Mashable just published this infographic stating things like 8-digit passwords with uppercase and lowercase with numbers and symbols would take 463 years to crack. I just sent you what was that, a 15-character password, and it took you guys like 5 seconds to crack with your cluster. What's the fundamental problem with the way that this infographic is displaying this information?
Right here, 7-digit password, uppercase and lowercase letters, 3 years to crack. I can tell you right now, I can exhaust that in, probably just a few minutes. I can get actual figures for you here, but I mean, that'd be nothing. That's 52 to the 7th. That's a very small key space. I can just demolish that.
So for the consumer that's actually on the other end of the web service, like signing up for their Facebook or Twitter or whatever web service it is, how does the hash algorithm come into play there? And as you mentioned, hash dumps, what are those? Where do you get those?
The reason that we hash passwords is to provide some kind of protection against recovery should those hashes be leaked. It's kind of like your last line of defense in a breach, right? So like when LinkedIn was breached, right? LinkedIn hashed their passwords as SHA-1. We were able to recover 90% of those passwords in a little over 6 days. So under a week, we got 90% cracked. So what that did was that means that LinkedIn only bought themselves, or rather bought their users, 1 week of time between notification and telling the users you need to change your passwords, all those good things.
So I'm right in understanding that what you're saying is that not all hashing algorithms are created equal, and yet there's still this low-hanging fruit. You mentioned SHA-1, there's other ones like MD5. Why are web services still using these? Maybe you're not the best person to answer that. What kind of hacks have they done to add security to these weak message digest algorithms like MD5 and SHA-1? And what is the user to do?
Well, to answer the last question first, what's the user to do? There's really not much a user can do aside from more people demanding that websites start publishing their password storage policies, like in their privacy policy. Instead of saying we used, industry best standards or whatever, industry best practices to store users' passwords or secure user information, actually come out with specifics. Now, to go back to your first question, no, not all hash algorithms are created equal. A hash algorithm in general, like MD5, SHA-1, even SHA-2, the new SHA-3, they're made for speed. They're not made for password storage. They have the exact opposite goals in mind. What we're looking at here is how fast can the algorithm that you're using to store the password be computed. For things like MD5 and SHA-1, they're designed to be computed as fast as possible because they're meant to be used in things like IPsec and OpenSSL. They're meant to be used in any sort of environment where you need very rapid message digest, real-time
encryption.
Yeah, exactly, real-time encryption. That's what I'm looking for. They're not meant for actually securing data in the context of long-term storage. Password storage algorithms are specifically meant to store passwords, right? They can utilize things like MD5, but they don't do just one single iteration of MD5. They do things like key stretching and iterative functions and employ things like unique salts per user to ensure that it takes the most amount of time to recover those hashes.
Given that you're a user and you're going to use the web service no matter whether they have it in their privacy policy, what they're using or not, and whether you even know to look for that or not. So hopefully the industry matures a little bit in that sense. But until then, what do you recommend to end users? Are you a fan of password vaults or password managers, or how do you feel about that?
I'm probably not as big of a fan of things like password managers as other people in this industry are. I'm leaning more towards the passphrase aspect, just because personally as a password cracker, I know how hard it is to crack good, strong passphrases. But I think the biggest thing I would recommend is to use a unique password per site. That's probably going to be the biggest win for you in the long run. Because like you said, if you don't know the password storage policy, even if you are using a password manager and you have a 64-character, random password, it could very well be that your password is being stored as plain text. You just don't really know. The biggest thing that is going to help you is using a unique password per site, so that if your password is compromised on LinkedIn or Rocky or wherever, that can't be used to get into your email, get into your PayPal, get into your eBay account. Those are things you want to try to prevent.
I hope that was insightful. A bunch of math geeks will tell me that this advice is horrible. However, I will say if you take that weak password you've got, that like 8-character one, and you just type it in twice, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have a longer password.
Entropy is good, but
different ones on every website,
great.
Of course. Different one on every website.
Yes,
can't stress that enough.
That's the best.
Yeah.
And we should get a roundup of password managers for those who don't want to come up with a complex system in their head.
I use one.
You can get really exhausted trying to keep all those in your head.
Yes, you can. Now remember that you guys can always find really easy ways to subscribe over at threatwire.org, and you can also get involved with our Google Plus community, which is really, really interesting
lately. There's so much going on day to day that we can't cover in this little 6-minute YouTube. However, that's where the conversation continues to go every day over at threatwire.org.
And with that, Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy
I
New
hope
Year.
you had a wonderful holiday. And yeah, it was a good holiday for me.
I'm probably still hungover. We'll see you next week. I'm Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Morse.
We'll see you on the internet.
Bye. Instagram has updated their policy to say that they basically have the right to sell your photos for profit to businesses or anybody who offers up the cash. Obviously, this got users really upset over the issue, since the only way to block this policy was to delete their account before the January deadline.